Hi, my name is Gabe Hordos. I was the supervising animator for Toothless on DreamWorks' How to Train Your Dragon. Today we're actually going to try and draw him. He's a little complicated, so I'm going to try and draw in very simple stages that I hope you can follow along. And at the end of it, I hope we get something that looks really cool. So let's give it a go. So the first thing that we want to do is draw his face. And all that is actually a very simple circle. We don't really see too much of the character yet. So what we're going to do is start to throw in some of the elements that make him look like Toothless. We're going to just quickly throw in his ears, because his ears actually were a huge part of his iconic shape. You know, when you have a character, you really want people to recognize who they are right off the bat. And Toothless's head and his ear structure is really a big part of who he is. So once we get the right to describe this iconic shape
that we've all started recognizing Toothless as. So if you can get those two shapes down, the ears and the circle for the head, I think we're well on our way to creating Toothless. So the next thing to focus on is his neck. So what I'm going to do is draw a really straight line, and the other side should be a nice half circle. And what this does is it gives you a very strong, muscular, powerful neck. Now you can start to see a recognizable shape. The next part we're going to try to figure out is how to draw his body and his arms. Now what we're going to do is we're going to draw a line continuing from the neck and draw it about double the position of where that neck ended. It's about the right length for his front leg. As we do, we're going to draw the back shape. And as we did the neck, where the one side has a curve and the one side has a straight line, we're going to do a similar thing for his back. And this might seem complicated, but if you just get that shape working, we're going to be totally on par with how Toothless looks. So it's that half circular shape that's going to start describing who he is. And then this is going to be the ground. Now Toothless has huge wings. They're like 3 times the size of his body. And his wing always has a shoulder, which is this little thing, this little half circle here, which goes into a little bit of a straight line. And then his elbow, just think of it like a real arm, where you have your shoulder and you have your elbow, and it bends into his wrist or his fingers. And then that actually curves all the way back, all the way down to the ground, because he's got these huge, ginormous wings that allow him to fly at these massively intense speeds that he does. On the other side, right where that neck met the beginning of the shoulder, we're going to draw a half of a sausage, which will be his other wing. The next thing to do is to figure out his tail. His tail is the most important part of his body, the most important part of him being able to fly. And we're going to draw the part that's actually broken. So let's be careful when we draw that tail fin. You know, put a little extra care, because it's a sensitive part for Toothless. It probably hurts just a little bit. So as we draw these very simple roundy shapes, we start to see the formation of the tail. So if we can get this shape to work, the rest of the stuff should now fall into place within the character. Now the next part that makes him very recognizable is his eyes. The eyes of Toothless are so important. They're probably the most important part of the character. This is where the life and the charm comes from. His eyes are actually quite low on the structure of his face, which he needs it to be in order to fly at these breakneck speeds. He needs to be the furthest so that he can see everything. There's no in the way of keeping his target. Now let's move to the horns. And the horns are these little shaped things on the side of his face that we started to use sort of receptor this bat lens that he has and all dragons have as they're finding their way home. And so they actually go right beside the eyes, and there's 2 of them, and they curl around into a similar sausagey type shape as we did down here. And then maybe on the other side, let's just draw one, as if we can't see them both. Now let's concentrate on the nose. We'll draw a little circle and another little circle, and then we'll draw the nostril. As we draw his nostril, we just want to find the half point of that circle and then just draw a nice little shape like that, which then now will have a little side on it. As you notice in the movie, as we're animating him, a lot of his expression doesn't come from the mouth. It actually comes from the eyes and the nose. There's a lot of little things he does, little twists and turns, and those little things just go so far to making this guy super adorable and believable. So, as we draw the bottom side of his face, we're not actually going to concentrate too much on a mouth. We're going to draw a very small of a mouth right there. Really little tiny shape, just to, you know, fill it out. The next thing you want to do is draw his pupils. His pupils are actually quite square. You'll notice they're not perfectly round. Throughout the movie, they actually change shape. When he's angry or intense, we tried to keep them really thin. And as he becomes more friendly with Hiccup and becomes Hiccup, we started to dilate them and make them a little bigger. And this makes him that much cuter. He's got a hint of an eyebrow, which are more of a mass of muscle that would just squish down his eyes when he has to get intimidating. But when he's happy or friendly, we didn't really do too much with them. We just let the shape of his eye do subtlety for his emotions. All we have to do now is start to fill in the blanks. On the top of his head, there are some little spikes. He's got, I'd say, 5 or 6 little spiky type things. Another little thing that we always tried to do was have a very subtle difference in the shape of these top horns. One is a little bit taller than the other, so that they didn't twin or they didn't look exactly the same. A lot of the shapes that we chose with Toothless were slightly off angle. So one thing was usually taller than another, one thing was shorter than another. All we have to do now is start to fill in the body. So let's draw the leg, and as we come down all the way, we'll draw the ground and his toes. And then we'll start to draw in his front leg. So now we're going to go up and we're going to try find a halfway point, which I think if you draw from the nose down, you're going to come to the center of his torso. And from there, we want to start to figure out where his other arm would be, which is going to come in. We're going to draw it into a little bit of a slightly off the ground shape. So we have the one leg and the shape beginning for the other leg. And we're going to fill in this other leg here. So don't forget about these sharp little shapes that we have on the underside of his forearm. They just make him look cool. Now that that's kind of working, we're going to fill in his hind leg. So all we have to do with his hind leg sounds really complicated, so we're going to treat it super simple, and we're just going to draw an oval shape. There's little tiny circles we can add to his knees, as if the skin has kind of folded up or something. Those little things kind of add a little bit too. And now again, let's fill in the toes. And what you'll notice in the movie is that his toes are always a little bit bent or curved. It really made him look organic, and it made him look kind of cool. So when you watch the movie next time, take a look at the toes. And his other leg is actually going to be behind this leg, so we're just going to get a hint of it, and we're going to color it in. So now that we have all those shapes kind of working, you get a really good sense that Toothless is starting to become recognizable. So what we want to do then is just quickly finish off the shoulder as if it's the underarm of his wing that goes all the way up to meet that corner, and then it shoots up. So let's just draw that shape. But on the underside, we'll actually draw the wing fingers and the shape of kind of like a bat wing, where they just have these nice little curves as those fingers would go up. So now let's figure out, as we go and fill in the tail, he's actually got little spiny type things that go all the way down his back, which we don't see in this pose, and onto the tail. So all you have to do is go from the top, come around, and keep it going until we get to the tail fin. The tail fin, which is actually missing half of itself. And what we're going to do is we're just going to draw a bunch of inverse sort of circles. Let's do 1, 2, 3, 4 of them. And then we're going to draw a little finger and a little finger and a little finger. And that's pretty much it. And we'll put a little bit of a hint of where the old one, the missing piece of the tail was. So that pretty much is how I would draw Toothless. He's a little bit complicated, so if your drawing doesn't look quite like mine does, I mean, mine doesn't really look like him perfectly either. He's a little tricky to draw, but if you get the eyes and the ears right and the shape of his wing and his tail, I think it just feels like him. On behalf of all the animators that worked on him, we're so happy that you love him, and keep drawing him because it's really cool to see. Thank you.